The best point of the endgame of Attack on Titan is that rather than it just being the side that you've been fighting on now is fighting their enemies and then we watch them win or lose, rather Isayama took the approach of flipping perspectives around, ending an incredible arc with our group wondering what's across the ocean and if they destroy them, will they be free? To then switching it to the characters that broke down the wall in episode 1, seeing their lives and seeing how shitty they're treated by Marley and how they view their same people across the ocean as demons, and this is the only way to live, that the racism that's there, that's what you have to deal with. And the idea of perspective and how important it is, and just as the arc gets going, it just gets crazier and crazier to the point where it's just people fighting for their lives rather than here's our heroes and here's our villains. It's just people, and it's such an interesting war-torn story for that reason alone. And there's going to be a lot of discussion about a certain character at the end of the episode, and this is where it gets difficult for me as someone who actively avoids spoilers. And it's not because it's difficult for me not even just not to be able to talk about certain things without knowing the answers. It's because people just don't care, and people are very rude and inconsiderate to other people's feelings. I've read every chapter of Attack on Titan manga. I know where this goes, but there's a lot of anime originals. So all I'm going to say, this is not a spoiler. I am going to place my thought process back when I read the manga. I would point you to my chapter reviews if I didn't have to take them down because of copyright reasons. So this isn't me spoiling, this isn't me doing anything other than rewinding to what every manga reader... Keep in mind, manga chapters are once a month. This was a long, painful journey of questioning, was this Eren or was this a random character? Because on one hand you would say, oh, this could be Eren, this could be Eren with long hair. A lot of the figures of speech that he says, that could be Eren. Or it could be a random character. And that was a constant back and forth that every month I switched my opinion on. So I'm not going to say one way or another. All I'm going to say is that the brilliance of that conversation towards Falco is it basically sums down what it means to suffer and what it means to live with the guilt of fighting another day, and just seeing the idea of something that feels so reminiscent to Eren's dialogue, but most importantly is towards Reiner, because Reiner's a character who is one of the all-time best written Attack on Titan characters. This is a character who suffers beyond belief. This is a character who I continue to wish could get peace, but continues to live time and time again. The suicide attempt in this episode, and if it wasn't for the lucky coincidence of our boy bashing on the wall, kind of snapping him to realizing that he has something that's worth fighting for, not for his own life, but for these kids. And then to see the conversation with Falco at the end, with a conversation that really just puts into perspective just how brutal it means to live when you have so much guilt kind of pulling you down. And that's what I love about it, is that you have something that feels so ominous, that you're questioning in your mind, what does this mean? Is this honestly just a random civilian, or is this something bigger in the making? And it's very hard to say, because one of my favorite parts about anime and manga is that there's so many times characters look similar and you don't know if that's on purpose or not. And that's what I love about this, because there's always going to be the speculation. And that's kind of the fun thing about Attack on Titan, especially in the end stages, is that Isayama purposely wrote it to be that you speculate, is this important or not? And it's not until it happens if you know it is or not. It's kind of disappointing that manga readers are always so gung-ho to shut it down for other people, because those same people were wondering when reading the manga the same way anime originals are wondering. And the beauty about this episode, which there are going to be those manga readers who will get kind of up in arms about cut content and things like that. The only thing I can personally say that was a tad disappointing was there was more information on Annie's kind of like role with the wall. But then again, we could touch upon that again in the future. It depends. But there also is dialogue in season 1 that kind of does indicate what's happened through Armin's figure of speech. So I'm not going to say it just because I think they could maybe re-include it later. But otherwise, this episode, I mean, they're adapting about 2 chapters per episode, which is perfectly on point. There's a lot of dialogue. We're not going to cover every single thing. Let's not kid ourselves. The importance of the anime medium is making that content work for the medium, while adding in new stuff and rearranging, changing, sometimes cutting, depending on how it is. And Isayama's always had a very good hand in the production. I mean, the first couple of episodes already had Isayama's inputs, such as things that Falco said in the first episode. Like, there's a lot that's always being care and attention put into it, and I think this episode had just as much. I mean, you're seeing the idea of these kids just wanting the best to be honorary Marleyans. They want to be able to take up their titans, and you're seeing Reiner, who very much, in my opinion, reminds me of Eren, someone who's gun-ho about destroying their enemies, doing what's best, but completely getting slapped alongside the face, saying you're not good enough, this and that. But then he gets the armored titan. It's looking great for Reiner. Being Reiner doesn't suck as much as we think. And then you realize that Reiner was never meant to be the armored titan, and if Reiner goes back, not only will he be killed to have his titan pass to another, literally everything about this mission gets shittier and shittier the more you watch. He meets his father says drop dead. Everything about it is like Reiner's life is suffering. And in my opinion, Isayama made Reiner just to suffer, but at the very least his suffering does serve purpose to the story and his character arc in general. But I can't deny that honestly the first time when I read the chapter and I saw Reiner with the gun barrel, I was like, my man, you were taught that these were enemies of humanity. You were taught that these are the enemies that you must kill. You spend years with them realizing they're not as bad as they're made out to be. And you're questioning who's friend, who's foe. You're doing all these atrocities and you're constantly back and forth not knowing who to fight for. I feel you, man. I think most people put in your situation would want the easy way out because your life has been anything but easy. And the fact that he continues to fight for other people's sake, not his own, it's so soul-crushing to see a character who easily could have been the character who destroyed the wall, and we hate them as a villain, becomes a character you feel bad about because he was raised to think a certain way, went over to do that mission, fought alongside these enemies for so many years, realizing that you do want to call them friends, and that it's not just you playing nice with them, you actually did care for them to some degree, and the constant back and forth of not knowing who you fight for, it's painful. And that's what's so great about this episode, and that's why I really like the conversation at the very end with Falco, because it just kind of reinforces everything about just not knowing where to go from here, not knowing, you know, with the burden, the guilt, everything you know, what it means to push forward and how pushing forward is so hard because you're living with so much guilt already. And that's what I love about this episode, is how, for being a backstory episode, fleshing out everything from season 1, seeing Ymir come up from the dirt, eating Marcel, seeing how that's a failure of the mission, they went back, they would all end up dead, so you have to at least do something, destroying the walls, Annie trying to say, like, I do not want to do this, let's retreat. It's just, there's so much happening and it just makes it feel so personal. One of the best parts of this episode and the chapters that it adapted is when you go back and reread and look at season 1 and just all the information and all the interactions that Reiner and these people had. It's so amazing. If I'm not mistaken, I could be misremembering this one. I'm going off of really old memory. The story that Reiner and Bertolt told Eren and Armin back in, like when they're in the cabin, about where they came from, they used the old man who killed himself in this episode where we got the backstory as their story of where they came from. I could be completely mistaken, but I think that's like one of the like little small things that you don't think much about, but it just has so much foreshadowing for the future. That's what I love about Isayama's writing, is that there's just so many layers and foreshadowing, and that Attack on Titan's never been that show that gets better with each arc. I personally think it does get better with each arc. But when you take the information of all the new arcs and you go back and look at the previous ones, not only do you see them in completely different lights, you realize that this was never a story that was just arc by arc. There was a long vision in mind, and while yes, originally, I think the original goal to end Attack on Titan was like around 60 to chapter 90, and then now obviously we're getting closer to the 140s mark. Obviously, like, that has happened, but there's always been a vision. He's just fleshed things out along the way. And not many authors can do that. If it wasn't for coronavirus, this man would have never taken a break with the manga. He had a 10-year track record month by month. And to see the same passion in the anime be happening, and there's always going to be the naysayers, there's always going to be the wit enthusiasts, there's going to be the map enthusiasts, there's going to be the anime enthusiasts, the manga enthusiasts. At the end of the day, this has been a passion project ever since episode 1. The production and work schedule for this anime sucks more than most, but it is a passion project. This was probably the most inline wit episode in terms of the visuals, but I mean, just look at the Titans in this episode. The only one that appeared to be 3D, I think, was Reiner's. All the others were beautifully hand-drawn, the Colossals and everything like that. It was destructive, it gives you a lot of clarifications on the different Titan shifters. It's just a very info-packed episode that, should you have no experience with the manga, yeah, you might be needing to rewatch it a couple times to take in a lot of this detail. You might need to rewatch the anime if you haven't done so already in anticipation for the final season. But this is the same thing. It covered all the main details that it needed to really solidify who Reiner is as a character, how tragic his life is, and how the idea that, yeah, Marley, in terms of what they're doing to these people, it is shitty. It is literally racism beyond repair. But the interesting thing is that we're not really focusing on them. We're focusing on the people who have been taught these things and how they are so fearful of their own people that they have to just live like this, and what it means to really be human at the end of the day. Incredible episode. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion. Like I said, please be considered for anime onlys. When we were reading the manga, we had no damn idea a lot of things that were happening. We were confident, then we weren't confident. All that we should be discussing is what's been seen in the episode. And stuff like cut content, it's really hard to say, is it cut until we see the full product? Because anime isn't just chapter by chapter. They take some chapters from here, some here, from here, and they rearrange it and kind of make it a bit more fluid for the anime medium. So we'll have to wait and see in terms of what's been cut. I will say the Annie thing I think was a little unfortunate, but besides that, I think the episode had a really good adaptation overall, but I'd be interested to hear, what did everyone think? Mysterious Man, we had Reiner's sad story. Where do you think it's going to go in episode 4? Let me know. If you enjoyed the video, of course, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.